All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at a really complex, profoundly tragic situation that unfolded on the 4th of July. So let's set the scene, okay? We're on Horn Island, which is right off the coast of Mississippi. An 18-year-old young man named Nolan Wells goes on a boating trip with his friends, and incredibly, just seemingly vanishes into thin air. And what he leaves behind is this wild trail of conflicting stories, intense public scrutiny, and a family that is absolutely desperate for answers.
To really grasp the chaos of that day, just listen to the frantic nature of this snippet from a 911 distress call made by his friends. The dispatcher asks, "Is there a living person, someone breathing on the boat?" And the response is, "Yes, there's lots of people breathing on the boat." I mean, it just drops us immediately into the tension and confusion of this whole mystery. What was actually happening out there on the water? And, more importantly, where exactly was Nolan when this call was being made?
So the crucial point we're trying to understand here, and really the main question framing this entire investigation, is this. How does a healthy, athletic teenager go missing in broad daylight, surrounded by hundreds of people? Sure, it's a barrier island, but it was a massive holiday gathering. Nolan's grieving family has been fighting tirelessly for answers. They've even hired prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump to make absolutely sure that law enforcement conducts a totally thorough investigation into this exact question.
Section 1. The Cajun Navy's Findings.
Now keep in mind, this is not the official sheriff's report, but a newly released independent review by the Volunteer United Cajun Navy is offering us the clearest picture yet of what investigators are actually trying to verify. The report essentially maps out the physical scene like a giant puzzle, using previously unseen photos to show 3 boats anchored side by side. Based on the source annotations, we have the Palm Beach, we have the Triton, which is the vessel Nolan actually arrived on, and then a mystery vessel labeled Boat 3 or Boat X. Figuring out exactly who is moving between these specific boats and exactly when is an absolutely enormous piece of this puzzle.
Section 2. The Missing Hour.
And this right here brings us to the most confounding finding of the entire report, a massive gap in time right in the middle of a sea of crowds and cameras. Let's actually walk through this minute by minute. The last independently corroborated sighting of Nolan is at 3:23 p.m. Then we hit this entirely uncorroborated window that ends at 4:27 p.m. Literally 4 minutes later, at 4:31 p.m., his friends depart on the Triton. Finally, a witness named Caitlin Bouchard snaps a photo at 7:30 p.m., officially reporting that as her group left the island, Nolan was, quote, nowhere in sight.
So I really want you to let that sink in. There is essentially one single missing hour. That 1 hour between roughly 3:23 and 4:27 dictates this entire mystery. What on earth happened to Nolan Wells on that crowded beach during that specific, completely unverified window of time? It's a gap that investigators absolutely have to fill.
Section 3. Clashing evidence and fallout.
Because of this timeline gap, we're left with some incredibly stark contradictions, strictly based on what the source material is showing us. First up is a major clash regarding Nolan's physical condition. You have Nolan's mother, who is relying on an account from a football coach who saw him that afternoon, stating Nolan was perfectly fine and not sloppy drunk. But then, contrast that directly with an official internal email from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, which specifically notes a belief that Nolan had a, quote, heavy alcohol intake. So we are looking at 2 entirely different pictures of his state of mind right before he vanished.
We also have a major contradiction regarding the boat itself. The narrative coming from Nolan's friends claims their boat was taking on water, which caused them to panic and leave the island without him. However, the Cajun Navy report found 0 evidence to confirm when the boat actually started taking on water. Furthermore, the physical evidence shows the boat was moving at speeds of 6 to 4.2 knots for nearly an hour. As marine forensic experts point out, moving at that speed with power actually forces water to the back of the boat, allowing it to just drain out via gravity. So, it raises some serious, rather surprising scientific questions about the actual severity of the emergency at the exact moment they decided to leave.
And as these conflicting narratives just swirl online, the tension has really boiled over into some intense real-world fallout. 3 of Nolan's friends who were there that day, Warren Hudson, Jax Patalo, and Morgan Seymour, have actually had to set a $100,000 goal on a Give, Send, Go fundraiser. This money is being raised specifically to cover legal defense costs so they can pursue potential defamation claims against the people attacking them online.
And honestly, the reason they need that legal defense fund is severe. These young men state they've been absolutely inundated with horrific death threats from online mobs who are falsely blaming them for Nolan's death. It got so bad that they couldn't even safely attend their best friend's funeral. And law enforcement is taking this incredibly seriously for sure. A man in Illinois was recently arrested for allegedly threatening to kill witnesses and send their body parts to their home addresses, and this follows similar arrests in Ohio and California. This kind of runaway online sleuthing has just created a highly dangerous, totally volatile environment.
Section 4. The wait for justice. So with all this noise and all this speculation, what actually has to happen next for the real truth to be uncovered? Well, the Cajun Navy report outlines 5 very specific problems that have to be resolved before anyone can claim certainty about Nolan's movements. Let's rapid fire through them. 1. Investigators must fully authenticate the exact time and location of that last corroborated sighting. 2. They need to verify if the social media timestamps are the actual event times. 3. Conclusively identify Boat X and exactly who was on it. 4. Verify the 4:31 p.m. departure using primary electronic GPS data. And 5. They need to painstakingly create a complete, occupant-by-occupant vessel roster to compare every single statement against the visual record.
But there is a massive legal roadblock holding up any kind of public answers right now. District Attorney Angel Myers-McCarroth has stated that under state law, the official completed state autopsy and toxicology reports have to remain completely sealed pending a grand jury. If you're not familiar, a grand jury is a legal body impaneled to review evidence and make a decision on potential criminal conduct. And basically, until this lengthy legal process completely runs its course, those official medical documents are simply not going to see the light of day.
Which really leaves us with this final, lingering thought. Even if a grand jury convenes, and even if that sealed autopsy eventually reveals the exact medical cause of Nolan Wells' death, will we ever actually know what truly happened in that missing hour? Whether it was a tragic, unseen accident or something else entirely, an 18-year-old's life was cut tragically short. Now, a grieving family and a desperate community are left waiting to see if science and data can finally fill the silence of that one missing hour. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.